Yes, everybody can see the screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we will go to verse 62. Very important verse. Let's just recite the verse, translation and purport, and then we'll try and take some teachings from here. So verse 2.62. Dhyayato vishayan pumsha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bijayate. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. Does anybody want to read the purport today? Any volunteers?
I'll do it.
Okay, Chaitna Mataji, please go ahead. You can read it from the screen.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my volume just went down. Okay. One who is not Krishna conscious is subject to material desires while contemplating the objects of the senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of the other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of the sense objects, and the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Maya Devi, but Haridasa easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above-mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial sorry, I read it from your screen because it's half in my book. Repression is sure ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate and gratify his desires.
Thank you, Chaitna Mataji. Thank you. I was just seeing there was some sound coming, background sound. So, okay, before we continue, we'll just recite our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namate. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshadarine. Okay, so, right, so very, very important verse. And actually very important teachings, but Prabhupada has used lots of examples of great personalities. So we will look at some examples and stories and see how we can learn our lessons from there. So the first thing Prabhupada says in the purport is, one who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the objects of the senses. So if you notice, till now in the previous verses, Krishna has been speaking to Arjuna that one must fix his consciousness on the Lord. Now, in this verse, actually, Krishna is giving us a warning in a sense that what will the consequence be if we don't fix our consciousness on Krishna. So here, it's being said that if when we start contemplating on the objects of the senses, then what is the result? And we will use a very nice example of. So here you can see these billboard ads. All of us are subjected to various kinds of ads, whether it is TV or magazines or social media these days, Facebook and Instagram and whatever else. Now, what all of these ads are trying to do is they are bombarding our senses and they are trying to grab our attention. Now, when somebody sees this kind of an ad, which is, for alcohol or whatever, there are three ways a person can react, or to put it, there are three different types of people who will react differently. Now, there may be a person who has never ever had. May I request everybody to please be on mute because I can hear some background sound. If I can please request everybody to mute yourselves, otherwise it is disturbing.
Why am I?
Okay, so one person, let's say, who's never had any alcohol in his life, when he sees this ad, it'll not affect him at all because he's never actually had it. So it's like something that is strange to him. For him, it just doesn't interest him at all. Then a second person who's probably had it a couple of times, starts to think in his mind, his mind starts talking to him that it would be nice maybe to, just have it again to see how it feels or to taste it, So these kinds of thoughts start coming to this person's mind. And then there is a third kind of person who is a complete alcoholic. He is so used to having it that as soon as he sees this ad, it's almost a compulsion, because of his habit. He's forced to kind of want to drink. So when we take this example and put it in our today's verse, now if you think about it, the verse says, sorry, I just need to open it on my. Yeah. So the verse says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsha. Dhyayato. What is Dhyayato? Dhyayato is while contemplating. So Dhyayato Vishayan. Vishayan is the sense object.
Sense object.
There's a lot of
There's a lot of
sound.
sound.
Okay. So the first thing is dhyayato vishayan. So when you are looking at a sense object and you're contemplating, so here what is happening is that one is looking at this ad, this bottle of alcohol that is being advertised. The next thing that happens is sangas. Sangas meaning you develop an attachment. So you start thinking that, I want this. Then the next thing that happens is sanjayate kamaha, means you have an intense desire It is so intense that besides that, you're not thinking of anything else. That has completely taken over all your other senses, and your complete attention is on that. And then the last thing that happens is krodho abhijayate, meaning if you're not able to get it, you start getting annoyed and angry, and you reach a stage where you think that if there is somebody who is going to stop you from getting your desire, you're going to get annoyed, right? Because your desire becomes so strong. So over here, by taking this example, you can see what exactly starts happening. As soon as you start contemplating on the object of your sense desire, you develop the attachment. When your attachment or your desire is not fulfilled, at that time you start getting angry and upset. Now, the real purpose of yoga, Prabhupada says in many of his lectures, that the real purpose of yoga is to control our senses. But controlling our senses is not that easy. However, the Bhagavad Gita, of course, teaches us, and we will see how we can control our senses. Now, as we discussed this verse, so what happens is there are 4 stages of fall down. As soon as we are contemplating on the sense objects, so dhyayato vishayan, we start contemplating, we develop an attachment, we have a desperate desire to get the object, and when we don't get the object, so when the lust is not fulfilled at that time, we develop anger, right? So these stages, so that's why this verse 62 actually is kind of a warning to all of us, that we all will go through these stages. It's only the time factor. Like I gave the example of 3 kinds of people: somebody who's never had alcohol, somebody who's probably tasted it, and somebody who is an alcoholic who cannot control his senses. Now, for the alcoholic, the stages from dhyato vishayan to krodho will be very, very quick, very fast. For the second person who's probably had it and he's able to control his senses, sometimes thinking, no, it is not the right thing, or this is not the right moment, that stage is a little slow. And for somebody who's never tasted it, that stage is much, much slow. It's not that Maya will not take over, because there are chances that that will happen. And we'll see in the examples today that even great personalities like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma were, taken over by this energy of the Lord. Prabhupada is giving us these examples here. So Prabhupada says in the purport that Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects. Now imagine this. Why these personalities? Why is Prabhupada using the names of these personalities? This is a warning to all of us. Don't think that you are above this. This energy of the Lord is so strong that each and every one of us is influenced by these sense objects. And Prabhupada obviously talks about how Brahma was, his senses, the senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and learned man. Who is more sensible and learned than Brahma? He is the secondary creator of the entire universe. But even he, when he saw the beauty of Saraswati, he was so taken in by the beauty of Saraswati. And there are verses in the Bhagavatam which describe what happens to Brahma, and then how his sons react to it. That how did this happen to you? How come you came under this influence, this such a wrong thing? And eventually, in order to in a sense apologize for this mistake that he had committed, Brahma had to give up his life. But Prabhupada explains to us, we must not start thinking of these great personalities as, this happened to Brahma. No, it is not that. These are just there. These pastimes happen and take place under the order of the Supreme Lord, just to teach all of us a lesson. So we must not start to think that, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are also the same like us. That is not the case. And Prabhupada explains in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 12, verse 28, he says, this extraordinarily immorality on the part of Brahma was heard to have occurred in some particular kalpa, but it could not have happened in the kalpa in which Brahma heard directly from the Lord the four essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. There is like how we have the Chaturshloki Gita, we also have the Chaturshloki, the four verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the Lord blessed Brahma after giving him lessons on the Bhagavatam that he would never be bewildered in any kalpa whatsoever. So this indicates that before hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, he might have fallen a victim to such sensuality, but after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there was no possibility of such failures. So we will, when we recap, we will come to the important lessons, but we're just taking the stories that are given to us by Prabhupada in the purport. Prabhupada gives the example of Brahma. Then he also talks about Lord Shiva. Now in the purport, he's talking about how Lord Shiva was deep in meditation and, being agitated by Parvati, and then Kartikeya was born. That is one story. Then we also know another story from the Bhagavatam, how when the churning of the ocean had taken place between the demigods and the demons, there was a fight to get the amrit, the nectar, and then Vishnu took the form of this beautiful Mohini Murti. And obviously the demons were completely in illusion, and the rest of the story that she managed to get the nectar, give it to the demigods. But Lord Shiva was not present when all of this was happening. So then he went on to Vishnu and he said to Vishnu that I have had darshan of so many different incarnations of you, but I have heard that you also took the form of this beautiful lady, and I have not seen that form of yours. Please, can you show me that form? And Lord Vishnu was smiling to himself and he said, all right, you want to see that form of mine. So, okay, I will show you. And then obviously then Lord Vishnu took the form of Mohini Murti. Now, Lord Shiva, when he saw this form, he saw this form of this female. She was playing with the ball, bouncing the ball, and the way she was moving, he was just completely infatuated in his mind. He could not take his eyes off this beautiful lady. Now imagine he was actually standing next to his wife. His wife is Bhavani. She is she is in charge of Maya. But even then, he was so completely enamored by this beautiful form that he could not take his eyes off. And Mohini Murti was playing with the bowl, and she was, a distant away. And Lord Shiva could not control himself. He wanted to go and touch her, and he started chasing behind her. And she was, moving, and he was running behind her. And in fact, Lord Vishnu, in the form of Mohini Murti, even ran through this gathering of the sages who were disciples and devotees of Lord Shiva and who were meditating on Lord Shiva. And when Lord Vishnu, in the form of Mohini Murti, went through this ashram of the sages, Lord Shiva was following. He had no control over his senses. He did not think for a moment that, what am I doing? And my disciples and devotees are seeing me in this way. He had no control. And then, the story continues. And then obviously he, after all of this, after some time passed and he kind of came back to his senses, Mohini Murti then took the original form of Vishnu. And Lord Shiva, of course, was then, not embarrassed. He wasn't embarrassed. He was simply proud of Lord Vishnu. And why was he proud? He was proud thinking that, you know, uh, I can burn Kamadev just by my eyes. But here, my Lord is so great that, he had complete control over me. But what we are trying to learn here is that great personalities like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma could not control their senses. Then who are you and me? Because this material energy is the energy of Lord Krishna. So it is very, very difficult. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita, um, oh, sorry, before that, just one point that, all of us are so taken in by this physical beauty of everything. Like, yes, we're talking about the female beauty right now. In the purport, Prabhupada is saying that, but everything. And the great Shankaracharya says that you are after this beauty, but have you analyzed this beauty? What is this beauty? It is just etad rakta mamsa vikaram. It is just some blood, mucus, flesh, bones. That's all that it is. It is nothing. But we are like as if we have we are completely in illusion. And Prabhupada uses the analogy of how in a desert, or sometimes, when you're driving and it's like a hot summer's day and the road is really, really hot, and you see this mirage in front of you, like as if there is water spilled on the road. You know, Actually, it is not water, it's just an illusion. But the material energy is enchanting everybody, just like how this mirage, you feel that there is water, but there is no water. So this material energy is enchanting us with the beauty, and we with the beauty, or with this promise of happiness. But actually, there is no beauty, there is no happiness, there is nothing here. This is just an illusion, you know. Um, I'm not sure if some of you may have heard this story of this prince. He saw this really beautiful young girl once, and he was so taken in by her beauty that he wanted to get married to her. And she was not really, she was a very chaste lady, and she did not want to get married to the prince. And she said that, um, you really just want to marry me for my beauty. So she said, why don't you come back after 10 days? And if at that time you still think that I am beautiful and you want to get married to me, then I will get married to you. And the prince said, of course, I know that I want to get married to you. And yes, I will come back after 10 days. So for those 10 days, this young lady, what she did is she started taking various medicines so that she would just throw up, pass stools, and she did not eat anything. So that is all that happened in 10 days. And what she was doing is, I know it's a bit gross, but it's a lesson that we have to learn. She was collecting all that she was throwing up in pots. After 10 days, she started looking pale and yellow. She'd completely become just bones because she wasn't eating anything. So the prince, when he came and he knocked on her door, she opened the door and he said, oh, I am looking for this very beautiful lady who lives here. I have come to get married to her. And she said to him that I am that same lady. And he said, no, you can't be. She was really beautiful. So this lady said to her, do you want to see my beauty? So she took him to the pot where she was collecting all this, and she showed, this is the beauty. So the point, what is being made is that this physical body is temporary, like how this material world is temporary. It's not permanent, it's not eternal. It is going to, like how the body deteriorates, same way everything around us. you know Sometimes we want, like, let's say, a new model of a car has come, or a new let's say a phone has come, and you just want it so badly. It's the best thing that's, and you must have it. And then after some time you realize that, there's another new model in the market. This one has now become old. So it's like how a child a child is excited when he sees a new toy. but eventually that toy becomes old or he's broken it and then he wants something new. So it's always it's a temporary happiness that we are looking for in this world. It is not eternal at all. That's what Prabhupada is using the analogy to explain this to us. And then in the Bhagavad Gita, it says very clearly in 7:14, Devi hi isha gunamai mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyate mayam etam tarantite. That this divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So imagine when great people like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva were not able to control our senses, then how difficult it is going to be for you and me. But Krishna is giving us the path. Krishna is giving us the method of how we can do it. And what is that? It's if we can surrender unto Him. How can we surrender? By using our senses in His service. That's it. The senses that are currently under the influence of the modes of material nature, the senses which are completely overtaken by this material energy, by all the advertisements that we see, by all these attention-seeking things that are being bombarded, where our senses are getting captivated by these things. If we can just divert our senses just to the service of Krishna, then we can easily overcome this material nature. That is what Krishna is telling us. And then, of course, he goes on to talk about, I'm sure many of you will know who this is, but for those who are new, we will just, in brief recap about this personality. Prabhupada talks about him in the purport. This is Haridas Thakur. Now, Haridas Thakur was a great devotee and associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What he did was he was so engrossed in chanting the name of the Lord that he built for himself a small hut on the outskirts of the village, and he had a small tulsi plant out of his little hut, and he used to sit there and chant 300,000 names of the Lord every single day. And in those times, the not the ruler, but a person who is in charge of that village, the ruler of that particular district, was a person called Ramachandra Khan. And Ramachandra Khan was always very envious of the devotees, and so he wanted to somehow or the other defame the devotees. When he heard about Haridas Thakur, that he sits there and he's chanting 300,000 names, and he tried to find some bad things about him so that he could defame Haridas Thakur, but he was unable to. So then what he did was he called all the prostitutes of that district, and he said to them that he said that there is a devotee called Haridas Thakur who lives in the outskirts, and you need to just plan some way to so that he can deviate from his religious promises that he has taken. And one young prostitute, who was probably very confident of her beauty, said to Ramchandra Khan that she would do this. And so she went to the this small hut of Haridas Thakur, and she dressed up very beautifully. She went there and she started speaking to him, and she said to him, oh great personality, oh great preacher, you are so young and you are so handsome, and I have come here to enjoy with you. So Haridas Thakur said to her, please wait here. I have made a promise that I have to chant a certain number of rounds, and I have not been able to complete my rounds. So you sit here while I'm chanting. As soon as I finish, then I will be available, So he did that. And then this lady sat there patiently waiting for him, at the same time listening to the holy name. She went back to Ramachandra Khan the next day and she said to him that, he has promised me that, today he will enjoy with me. So she went back the second night and she said the same thing to him. And Haridas Thakur said the same thing. He said, I promise you today I will finish chanting all my rounds and then I will enjoy with you. And he was chanting his rounds and the lady was sitting with him. She's sitting next to him, listening. By the third day, um, she had completely changed, and she, in fact, said to him, she begged forgiveness and she told him the truth. She said that I was sent here by Ramachandra Khan so that I could, do something so that you would break your religious promises. But after listening to you chanting and sitting here, I have realized how wrong I was. And she said to him, she prayed and she said, please accept me as your disciple and please guide me and help me. And Haridas Thakur then said to her that, you go back to the village, get rid of all your property that you have, anything that you have, get rid of everything. Just come here, worship Tulsi Maharani, look after her, and chant the holy names. So, what Prabhupada is doing here is giving us these two complete, opposite scenarios. On one hand, we have people like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva who were not able to control their senses. On the other hand, we have a personality like Haridas Thakur, who just on the strength of the holy name did not for even one moment allow his senses to take over him. And so that is what is being shown here, that you can control your senses if you are able to engage your senses in the service of the Lord. And that's why then I know very recently you've done this verse 259, which is a very, very important verse. And it says that the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment. You may restrict it, like you can see the picture of this sage. He is trying to restrict his senses, but in his mind, he is still, thinking of other things, because we have got so many lifetimes of memories that are there in our subtle body that it's not easy to completely clean this mirror of all this dust that has been accumulated. But if we develop a higher taste where we can start, using all our senses in the service of the Lord, then we will be able to very easily control our senses and we will be able to fix our consciousness in the Supreme Personality of of Godhead, in Krishna. So let me just stop sharing. And just to recap from today's verse, controlling the senses is not very easy. Artificially controlling the senses will lead to downfall. But if we can naturally control our senses, and when we say naturally, what one must understand is that inherently each and every one of us, because we are part and parcel of Krishna, our inherent nature is to be the servant of Krishna. It says, Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. So we are eternal servants of Krishna. That is our natural propensity. What we are doing now is not natural. That is being done under the influence of the three modes of material nature and this illusory energy of Krishna under Maya Devi. But if we can somehow, and we have been given the path by chanting the holy name, by associating with devotees, by performing services, by keeping Krishna in the center of our lives, if we can somehow clear this dust from our heart and go back to our natural tendency, natural propensity of being the servant of Krishna, then we will very easily be able to control our senses. Yes, we know that Maya Devi is very, very strong, but stronger than Maya Devi is the holy name of the Lord. And all of us in Kali Yuga, we don't have to perform any kind of austerities, go to the forest, fast for days and days. The only sacrifice that Krishna, Mahaprabhu, and Prabhupada have asked us to do is just chant the holy name of the Lord. And that's it. With that, we will be able to control our senses. So it is 38 past 8. I'll stop here And if there are any questions or comments, realizations, please unmute yourselves and ask. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for another wonderful class. Mataji, my question was that I was reading the song sung by Lord Shiva, Canto 4. And in that, Lord Shiva is saying that, my Lord, in the form of Aniruddha and Pradyumna, if I meditate on you, then I will be able to control my mind and my senses. So I was just wondering, how is that form different from the lotus feet of the Lord that we would be normally meditating on? Are there specific forms that he was talking about? Or?
That's a good question, Hema Mataji. And as of now, I don't think I am in a position to actually answer on that. I probably may have to do a bit more research. Although I have studied the Canto 4, but as of now, it doesn't. Because when I was researching this particular verse, nothing of this came up in any of the speakers' classes.
Sure.
So
I read it this afternoon. That's why it came to mind.
yeah. So this is something that I will have to do a bit of research and I can get back to you. But I'm making a note of your question and I will try and get back to you on this.
And can I just clarify one more thing? You know, you said
Yes,
that if you're surrendered to the Lord, and if you serve the Lord, then your senses will be more in control. Then you know Sita Mata, she was standing next to the Lord, and no one was more closer than Sita Mata to the Lord, and yet she was allured by Marichi in the form of deer. So I was just wondering, what lesson was there to learn from that?
See, one thing that Hema Mataji we always we have to remember is that when these great personalities, if there is some pastimes, then that means that we are being taught lessons. Like we can always say that Arjuna was with Krishna all the time. How was Arjuna getting illusion thinking of the bodies? But that is because the Bhagavad Gita had to be spoken,
Yes.
and that had to happen. Now the same thing. We know that Rama had incarnated just in order to finish Ravana. Now, if all of these things would have not happened, if all of these pastimes would not have happened, that she gets allured by the deer, and then Ravana is taking this form and whatever else, then eventually what happened between the great war would not have happened. So what we have to realize is that these are different pastimes performed by associates of the Lord in order to teach all of us throughout the history all these lessons. Like one may wonder that who is a greater associate of Vishnu or Krishna than Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma? How is it that they were not able to control their senses? I mean, how is that possible? Who can be a greater personality than Lord Brahma, who has been given this whole role of creating? But that is why Prabhupada is clarifying that, first of all, that this happened in a different kalpa. Secondly, we have to realize that these pastimes or these things that happen, they're just there to teach us lessons. Because if Shiva could control his senses when Kamadev is throwing all these arrows to him, how come he was not able to? But these are just there to teach us lessons. In fact, it says that Lord Vishnu on purpose passed through these ashram of the sages, so that he wanted to show them, don't become proud. Don't become proud of the austerities that you're performing, of the deep samadhi that you may be in sometimes. If I choose to, then all of you would completely get enamored by the beauty, the female beauty. So this is a lesson for all of us, that don't take this energy, this illusory energy, this material energy, Maya Devi, lightly and take her for granted. We have to always be on guard. We have to always take shelter of the Lord. That's all.
Yes, very powerful. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Madhu Kumari.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful class you have given. You know, all these different pastime you've just explained. It makes, when you hear it again and again, it gives so much, so much understanding of the whole thing, how everything is happening. I mean, like
Yes.
last night, I was reading on, Hiranyakashipu, how he became so powerful after the austerity, and Brahma gave him the, the boon for him to be so powerful. Eventually, he was, in a way, the way it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, that when he was kind of, everybody was serving him, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Lord Vishnu was serving him. And how, so how could it be like that? I think because of all these stories in Bhagavatam is teaching us, like the way you have just explained, teaching us to be, not to be, so attached to different things, and they're there for us to have the lessons, deep
Correct.
lessons, to come out of this material nature and,
Correct.
surrender completely to Krishna. Otherwise, these Bhagavatam stories are so wonderful. If you think deeply, this is all there for us to learn so much.
Correct.
I was really amazed.
Yes, yes, definitely, Balika Mataji. Otherwise, how would, why would such great personalities, have these kinds of leelas? It is, but think about it, when you think about it, there are two things that you learn from here.
Krishna then.
One is this deep understanding that how difficult it is to overcome this material nature.
Yes, yes,
And at the same time, how easy it becomes if we are able to surrender.
yes.
You know.
Thank you.
Anyways, yeah,
Really,
good
these
point
stories
to meditate.
really teach us a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, there is a question on chat. Is any spiritual progress being made by doing bhakti whilst at the same time not fully controlling the senses? Is such bhakti of any value? Yes, 100%. 100%. Any bhakti, any devotional service that you're doing, even at times, if it is done with the sense that you are going to get something in return, it's fine. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that four kinds of people approach me, artharthi. So, he says jigyasu and jnani, all these people. So, people who want some kind of material benedictions, people who want some fame, prestige, it doesn't matter. As long as they are approaching me, it is fine. It is still considered better than not approaching Krishna at all. So, yes, it's fine. Even if you are still, all of us, I speak for myself, I cannot control my senses at all, So does that mean that I completely give up and say that, what's the point? I cannot control my senses. Let me go the other way completely. No, it doesn't work like that. I'm trying. I'm trying. And I still keep trying to perform devotional services. And, Krishna will guide me. Krishna will help me. The devotees will help me. So, yes, please continue performing devotional service. Then there is another statement. If mind is not on Krishna, then it fixes on the sense objects and inevitably drags one into illusion. That is so correct, Bhagavati Mataji. And it is so, we read all this, we listen to all this, but yet it is so difficult sometimes because we live in this material world where we are constantly being bombarded by so many things. And you always think that you need this, you need this, you need this, and you need this, and you need this. It's not easy, but we can only try and we can hope.
I mean, anger, people commit mistakes and they later regret, but it's already created, you see, the mistakes done. So it's very difficult.
Very, very difficult. But I do feel that Krishna consciousness slowly, it may not happen immediately. For some people, it may within a second. Like Prabhupada said, you can become a pure devotee in a second. And for people like me, I think it might take lifetimes. But at least, I have the hope that in some lifetime, when Krishna desires, I might become a devotee. But till then, I'll just keep trying. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji,
Thank you.
salam to you, my humble obeisances. You are so good in teaching. So it is so much of knowledge is in you. So it won't take lifetimes, you know. After this
No,
lifetime, you'll go back to Godhead, because you're so
no, no,
good
no,
with
no.
knowledge. Knowledge is so important, actually, to understand all this. It is
No, no,
very,
but the knowledge, no, but the knowledge that it's not my knowledge. It's just that I just, borrow and I share. That's all that I do. So and the other thing one must realize, Rupa Mataji, very importantly, it's easy to have all this knowledge, but it is extremely difficult to apply it. You may know everything, but whether you apply it or no is the most important thing. You may know very little, and if you can apply that little, I'm telling you, you will be much more successful than knowing everything and not applying anything. That is my belief. That's what I believe.
it's true, Mataji. But the knowledge, I think the knowledge helps us, because before coming to Krishna consciousness and learning all this, it was like we were doing what society would expect of us, or parents, or our peers. It was like that. But now that we have this knowledge, we know that to please Krishna is the main thing. So whatever you do, whatever little or big we can do, if it is to please Krishna and in line with this knowledge, it helps, because as you say, that we might not become a pure devotee in 1 second, but
Yeah.
little bit, whatever we are doing, we can't. If I'm whatever, I'm in the house or something, I can do what I'm meant to do. But if
Yeah.
it is in devotional mood that I'm doing it for Krishna, okay, I am looking after the household for Krishna. So in that way, Krishna is saying that anybody can, become,
No,
anybody can come
definitely.
to me.
No, Rupa Mataji, that is the whole idea of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said, Sthane Sthita, wherever you are, just try and practice these principles of Krishna consciousness, and slowly you will get purified. And that is what we all hope for. And Prabhupada said, just hold on to me, just don't leave me. And that is what we all have to do. Just be in ISKCON, follow what we are being taught, and one day, whenever the time is right, then we let Krishna decide when the time is right for each of us.
Yes, Mataji, absolutely. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
There is one question from Santosh Mataji saying, is there a difference between taking shelter and surrendering to Krishna? Actually, not really, Santosh Mataji. In my understanding is, when you're taking shelter of Krishna, that means that you have surrendered to Krishna. Taking shelter means knowing that you have no other shelter, that there is nobody else who can protect you, there is nobody else who can help you. The only person that you want to be under protection is Krishna. So that is same as surrendering to Krishna. So there is no difference really. Yeah. Any other question or comments? If not, then we can stop. But if there are any questions, please feel free, or comments.
Hare Krishna Mataji,
Hare
it's
Krishna.
so wonderful. And as you say, since you know applying is very important, so definitely you are applying, Mataji, although you don't say that, you know it. And another thing I thought of saying, I remembered, Srila Prabhupada give us really a guarantee. Keep Maya is on the backside of Krishna. Keep ourselves in front and engage in service. So they can't, the external energy won't be able to attack us. So he's really giving a guarantee, writing it. I think it was yesterday or something. I read it in the code.
Definitely. That is what Prabhupada says, that, like how if you are in the sunlight, then, there is no darkness. What is darkness? Darkness is not another entity. Darkness is not something. It's just the absence of light. So if you're in the light, there will be no darkness. But the problem is that because this material energy is so powerful, that sometimes, even though we know everything, we know what the right thing to do is, we know what is, still we tend to get influenced. And that is when, that is when we struggle. But that is when we must then turn to Krishna again and take shelter, that, it's just so difficult, please help me. That's when we take shelter of Krishna, and take shelter of the holy name, actually, because the holy name is so powerful, because it is Krishna himself. And in this Kali Yuga, the best thing to do is just chant. I was reading somewhere today that if your mind is very, very agitated and disturbed, then just sit down and start chanting the holy name really loudly, and just keep chanting loudly till the time when you realize that now your mind has become peaceful. And I'll tell you something, it works. It works. Whenever I feel, and I tell myself that I'm getting a bit, disturbed with things and whatever, what should I do? What should I do? And I think, okay, best is just let me just chant. Now, at that time, the chanting may not be where, I'm completely focused because the mind is agitated, but you will see that after some time, you are able to then at least listen because you're chanting loudly. Remember, that's why I always say that when you're chanting, you must try and chant at that volume where you can at least hear yourself. That's very important because that really helps. So yeah, that's good.
Hare Krishna, Madhu Kumari Mataji.
Krishna Vani Mataji.
Yeah, that was very true, Mataji. Yeah, I've also experienced that you are agitated or your mind get disturbed or you get angry or somebody else got angry. You just pick up the bead bag and sit down and chant and your mind gets so peaceful.
Yes, it's so true. That is why sometimes it's so important. Like they say, the proof is in the pudding. Unless you eat the pudding, you won't know that it is sweet. No matter how many times people may tell you that. And that is why unless you start chanting, you will not realize what the benefits of chanting are. No matter how many times you may hear it, but unless you actually experience it, you will not accept it. And that's why it's so important that all of us, should take this and we should start chanting. We should then, when we realize it, we can share it with others that, it has helped me. I'm sure it will help you as well, So yeah, very important. Thank you, Krishna Vani Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. All right. If there are no further question or comments, then we will stop here. Thank you very much. Panchakalpatrubhascha kripa sindhu evacha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo koti vaishnavendra.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Wonderful.
Class.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Madhu Kumari Mataji.
Hare
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Enjoy the